unique work skills and the expanding work skills. And the core skills are things that I do every day that most of my peers or most of my coworkers can also do. So things like type email or speak a certain language or make coffee in the kitchen or use my card key to get in the door. Things that just core skills that I do that are just a natural part of work for everybody. The unique skills are the things that are specific to me, the talents and the skill set that I bring that are the reason that I'm employed or the reason that I'm being paid. And so those, there may be people similar to me, but for the most part, it's very unique to me. And then the expanding skills are things that I can learn to do better at my job, maybe how to use tools differently or better, learn a new programming language or learn to speak a new language. Things like that would help me do my job better if I could expand sort of my toolbox. And then the two rows here, the in-role behaviors are the things that I do every day, whether they're a makeup of my unique skills or my core skills, even new things I'm learning, but things that I do every day as part of my job. And then the organizational citizenship behaviors are things that I do or people on the team do to make our team a better place to work. And that might be anything from helping a neighbor to cleaning the coffee pot after work. Maybe I am able to put together a charity fundraiser for our team or schedule a game of football or a game of cricket. Things that make the team better but are not necessarily part of anyone's job. And so where we have seen the use of game mechanics be very successful is this core skills and organizational citizenship behaviors. I can speak a language and I can help out with something that's not part of my regular job. And I'll talk just briefly about the unique work skills, that upper center column there, unique work skills, the in-role behaviors. I like to refer to that as sort of the do Ross's job game. So if we put together a game that's do Ross's job and roll that out to 100 people, and we're all going to do Ross's job for a week, and we all play that game, and I come in 5th or 10th at my own job, I am feeling a little awkward, let's say, with my manager about the discussion about how the game went, right? Because I came in 10th at my own job. Or, on the contrary, I might come in 1st, which one might expect. I come in 1st at my own job. But maybe then I'm expecting a raise, right? Or maybe I should get a promotion because I came in 1st. And so there's some confusion how does the game relate to the traditional performance evaluation system? And so negotiating that translation between the two, or that exchange rate between what the game points mean versus what my paycheck means, is an awkward and can often backfire. And so that's where we've learned that games stay away from games like that and really focus on core skills for citizenship behaviors is really a great place. And then, as I mentioned before, the games for learning, games for education is also a very rich, productive space. So really, it's about recapturing discretionary time. We want to take people's free time, introduce them to an effort that's fun, that's voluntary for them, and sort of all the characteristics of play, and yet can produce productive output for the organization. So really going after, at lunch hour, hey, I can sit around and I can play this game that's useful for the organization, for the team, but it's fun and rewarding to me. So that's really what productivity games are all about. And so with that, I'll turn to a couple specific examples that we've done at Microsoft over the past few years and talk briefly first about what we call localization testing, which is really taking our software products and doing the language translation to make them useful for people who are non-English speakers. And so it's a large-scale problem. Windows 7 shipped in 100 languages. There are thousands of screens where the translation is important. And I'm not sure if you can see on the slide there, but you'll see a couple different translations for the same term. So sleep and hibernate are very similar, but slightly different. Sleep and shutdown. There's the idea of when I turn off the computer, I click and I choose this, making sure that the nuances between those translations are captured can be very difficult, especially when it comes to some more obscure languages. Just the number of people who are capable of doing those translations and being able to do them accurately takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of time. And so this is really right up the alley of a core skill that many people, Microsoft has thousands of employees, many of whom speak multiple languages. And so the thought was, well, perhaps we could introduce them to a game that would help them have some fun, have some input into the product, but also help us assess the quality of the linguistic translation. So a very aptly named language quality game, which was really a very simple browser-based game. And you can see just a little, what was a Silverlight application that flies in the screen in question and allows the player to select a pen color. You see up at the upper right there, select a pen color of their choice, or this could be related to levels in the game, and highlight anything that they had in question in terms of the quality of the translation. They could then type a comment if they wished underneath, and then drag that to the something's wrong or to the looks good little bubble there in the middle. And from that, they would earn a point. And the points would then accrue to their own score on a leaderboard. And then we also had a competition by language, so that many players could play together and strive for their language to be the most of highest quality, or the most reviewed, I would say. So the results were spectacular. We had over 500,000 screens reviewed across the 100 languages. We had over 4,500 players or reviewers, about 120 average number of screens per reviewer. The top reviewer had, I believe, 1,900 screens reviewed. And really what was most important was obviously the quality improvement, just having the, many eyes make bugs shallow philosophy from open source, and the idea that we could get several reviewers particularly for those translations that are politically important to get correct, geopolitical terms and things that are important to get correct, really having a number of different inputs on that really helps to improve the quality. And then we also saw a positive impact on the ship schedule. The typical process requires, whether it's vendors or employees, to look at all these screens. There's several hundred. And so by distributing and sort of crowdsourcing the effort, really helped us to expedite the process as well as improve the quality at the same time. So that was very important. And then the engagement with local subsidiaries. So for Windows, as part of our release process or installation process, people would have to put the latest version on their machine and kind of go search through and find all the dialogues, which is a very tedious effort. And here we removed a lot of that barrier, and we're able to provide a simple browser-based access for them to review the screen. So the idea that people could have input, could have an early look at the strings and the localization part of the product was very valuable, and we got a lot of positive feedback from local subsidiaries on the access that they had to the process. So overall, just a very simple game mechanics, but very, very productive and very effective in our objective of improving the linguistic quality. After that, a couple years after that, we just last year we did a program called Communicate Hope, which was a productivity game. We labeled it a benefit for disaster relief, and the idea was that players could come in and use the Microsoft Link product, which is audio video conferencing, instant messaging, web video calls, and use the product pre-release in a beta stage and try out different scenarios for us and give us feedback on how well those scenarios fit their needs, as well as identify any defects or problems that they had in completing their work. And so the idea was we have learned that, for productivity games, we really want to keep people playing. We want to provide game mechanics that appeal to everyone, because the more people play, the more productive we are as a whole, and the more fun people can have. And so there's the idea of player versus player, which is the glory and shame of the leaderboard, which is effective for many people, but not for everybody. And then there's the sort of player versus self, and this is sort of out of traditional game design, that can I beat my own high score? Can I do something repetitively for days in a row? And then there's the player versus environment, which is kind of a puzzle type activity. And so can I go find a hidden object? Can I go uncover or unlock some new level? Can I solve a puzzle, solve a riddle? And many people are motivated by that. And what we tried to go after with Communicate Hope was the idea of altruism, helping our neighbor. Can people who may not be interested in playing a game for those other reasons, would they benefit from the opportunity to help with disaster relief? And what we found was yes. The answer is yes. We had tremendous. We had about 1,000 active players, and we saw typically what we've seen in the past was about 4 times the level of engagement or participation from gamers versus non-gamers. But for this game, we saw over 16 times more feedback. And we had about 10,000 comments and suggestions from the 1,000 people, which was an order of magnitude more than previous programs. And about almost 70% of the players gave us feedback versus only 3% of the non-gamers. And so the idea of the game really resonated with a subset of people, but for those that it resonated with, they were really active in helping us achieve our objectives. And so we did see, once again, significant quality improvements for the product. Again, we saw a positive impact on the schedule because we were able to get a diverse set of people. These 1,000 people were, from all across Microsoft, so that idea of portfolio selection theory and diversifying the feedback really rang true, and that we were able to get a broad set of feedback. And then also team morale, that we could see that people were really impacted by not only the product we were making, but also by the impact we were having on disaster relief agencies. And so at the end of the game period, we donated a large sum of money, a portion to across 5 charities, a portion to the number of points that the players had earned for those respective charities. So people really felt like they had an opportunity to make an impact by helping us make a better product. So it was a great application of game mechanics in a real world, in a real business situation, but also had a real world impact. So I'll talk a couple, again, sort of focused on Link, and these two are important because there was not sort of an intense game development. None of our productivity games require much development, but it's more than zero in most cases. And these two, we really tried to keep the game development effort to a minimum, yet really benefit from the idea of having fun at work. And so these were focused on some of our mobile communication efforts. And the first was a build a story, where we people would weigh in via instant message and build a story together. So as example, the game master who kind of kicks off the gameplay would write a sentence. This is a story about a boy who, in search of treasure, notes a man who calls himself king. And then they would stop. And then another player would jump in and add a sentence of their own. And they would build over time, build a story. And it was fun and engaging to see where it would take us. And there's a few examples up there. But what was most important is people were actually exercising the product. We wanted them to send an instant message on a mobile device and really engage and understand the usability of that feature. What is the performance? What is the quality expectation? But how do you encourage a whole bunch of people to keep an instant message conversation going? And so this was a great way to really engage a number of participants and just keep a non-scripted but an engaging conversation that allowed us to exercise the product in ways that are difficult to do with a real world audience. And so another very similar example is solve a riddle. And what we wanted to do here was we wanted to test the audio portion. And so we had staffed a few folks at the receiving end of a couple different phone numbers, and then we put out a number of riddles. Basically, and we had sort of a gathering with food and stuff like that. And we put riddles on the tables and then encouraged if you could solve the riddle, you would pick up and make a phone call through your mobile link device, make a phone call to one of these numbers and give them the answer. We alternatively had a send an IM to get extra points and to engage differently. But we really wanted people to test making a phone call in the context. And then we could instrument the conversation. We could set up the right configuration and environment that we needed to test. But again, how do you encourage people to make a phone call? And so the idea of games and game mechanics and building a game around something fun encouraged a lot of people and whether they had different mobile devices, different installations or versions of the product, it enabled us to sort of crowdsource the phone call activity in a way that was a little more fun than, hey, we need you to help test our software. Would you call this number and say your name or something more mundane? This was a way to kind of make it fun and encourage engagement. And again, a lot of positive output and productive output and positive feedback on the process for essentially testing the product. Another one that's very been very popular around a number of security circles is what's called the Elevation of Privilege game, and this is a physical card game. It was developed by a man named Adam Shostak, who's part of Microsoft's security effort. And this is a game, a physical card game where in software engineering there's this idea of what's called a threat model. Is you really want to understand, as you're building more secure software, what are the potential threats and vulnerabilities that your software might be subject to. And you know, it requires a significant effort to really understand both the architecture and the technology and the makeup of the software, as well as the potential avenues for hackers or various attackers to come at your software. And so it's important for it to be a very thorough effort. And the Elevation of Privilege game allows people to, a number of sort of technical people on the product team will sit around and play this game, a physical card game, game of hearts, built on the game of hearts. And they will play this card game and develop vulnerabilities and then strategies to defend against those vulnerabilities as part of the gameplay. And one person will take notes and keep a record. But throughout the gameplay, which can take anywhere from half hour to a few hours, the output of the game will be the basis of a threat model. It's not a complete polished version, but it has invited a lot of structured brainstorming around the vulnerability.